All right, thank you so much for staying with Daybreak. Let's get into this discussion, and I'd like to introduce my guest this morning, Honorable Chris Wamalwa, Member of Parliament for Kiminini, and Joy Mudivo, former magistrate and advocate of the High Court, also is here with us. We're talking about this issue of the advisory from the Chief Justice to the President. And Joy, I'll start with you. What options does the President have?
Thank you very much, Trevor. We've had a lot over the last 2 days about shall and will and may. And I think in this particular instance, the word is clear. The President shall dissolve Parliament. He doesn't have any other option but to dissolve Parliament. But in this particular instance, where he has some wiggle room is that there is no timeline given for when this dissolution must happen. So if I was in the President's shoes, I would bid my time I would take my time with it, because in this current situation, if we dissolve Parliament, it obviously has very many repercussions. However, once the Chief Justice has pulled the trigger on giving him the advisory, then he has no option but to dissolve Parliament. That is the black letter of the law.
Okay. Honorable Wamalwa, what is the feeling of the members of Parliament there? Does Article 136 of the Constitution then apply, noting that the election of the President shall be on the same day as the general election of members of Parliament? Does the dissolution of Parliament therefore trigger a presidential election as well?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the advisory from the Chief Justice is very, very clear, in line with Article 261, Article 7 of the Constitution. And it has nothing to do with the general election. This is kind of a by-election. So the President is not affected at all, and the governors are not affected at all. The County Assembly MCAs are not affected at all. But something that is very important to note is that the Chief Justice lives in this country. The Chief Justice advisory was ill-advised. It was premature. We are aware that in 2 weeks' time, there is a petition at the High Court, which is supposed to make a determination whether the Justice Motivo orders which were given in 2017 applies in the 11th Parliament at the same time as the 12th Parliament. I don't see why the Chief Justice was in a rush. He should have waited. The Chief Justice lives in Kenya. The Chief Justice is aware about the challenges of the coronavirus. We still have social distancing. We note that in Msambweni, for instance, the by-election has never been held. In terms of preparedness of the IBC, it is a challenge. So I don't see why the Chief Justice rushed to make such a decision to plunge this country into a constitutional crisis. The Chief Justice is aware. Last week, we've had issues about the county allocation revenue bill, and the senators had just agreed with the formula, and the formula has been forwarded to the National Assembly. And you've had the Minister for Treasury, Yakuria Tan, saying his hands are tied. There's no way he can release the money to the counties until this bill has been passed by National Assembly. And yesterday, there was a communication from the Speaker, the transmission of this bill from the Senate to the National Assembly, and it was calling upon the relevant committee to have public participation in line with Article 118 of the Constitution. So this is an issue of common sense.
Okay.
We are aware that the Chief Justice is supposed to retire in 3 months' time. What was the rush? We are aware that the BBI report is supposed to be released anytime from now. The Chief Justice lives in Kenya. He's aware. Why was he rushing to plunge this country into a constitutional crisis? Those are the questions we are asking. I think it was ill-advised.
Joy, do you believe that because now the PSC has also gone to court, the same court that has pronounced itself 4 times on this matter, how different will this be?
I find it a bit hypocritical and slightly amusing when I listen to Honorable Wamalwa, because I lived in Mombasa for some time, and there's a day I went to a shop and I was trying to say, nipe haraka haraka nimetelewa. And the woman told me, untelewa huko utokako. This crisis was not precipitated by the Chief Justice. This crisis was precipitated by the failure by the 10th Parliament, the 11th Parliament to do that which the Constitution has said they ought to do. It is the parliamentarians who are being punished for failing to do their duty. It is not the Chief Justice who has precipitated this crisis. It is the National Assembly. And the National Assembly is the only organ in this country that can actually pass this legislation. But they have repeatedly failed to do so, refusing to think outside the box, refusing to understand that Kenyans gave themselves a constitution that in it ingrains gender parity. So the situation we have right now is not a creation of the Chief Justice. As Honorable Amalo has correctly pointed out, the Chief Justice is about to leave office in the next 3 months. This is in his entry, 6 whole petitions. Like you have said, the court has pronounced itself countless times before. I don't know what adventure they're going to the High Court hoping to achieve this time round. Not to mention, over the last few cycles, we've seen the National Assembly and the executive stepping on the neck of the judiciary, as it were, with budget cuts, with judges, with what. So judiciary is just simply in a situation where they're doing their job, but it looks like they're trying to fight back. In my opinion, it's true. The timing is completely not right for this country. Completely not right. But what the Chief Justice did, as far as I'm concerned, he's looking at his legacy. I'm about to leave. I have something on my entry. You know what? Whether or not to take my advice, I don't care. Right now, I've given you the advice. Do with it what you want to do with it. Yeah. But for the Honorable Amalo try and say that this is the fault of the Chief Justice, I think is a case of the pot calling the kettle black.
Honorable Amalo, why have you consistently failed to pass this 2/3 gender rule anyway?
First of all, I want to tell my sister there, it is not National Assembly, it is Parliament. And the concern is very clear. When you talk of Parliament, it's about the 2 chambers. That is the Senate and the National Assembly. As we speak right now, we have a bill that is active in the Senate. And if the Chief Justice will have had the interests of Kenyans, particularly looking at the timing, the challenges of Corona, the challenges in IBC, you should have waited to see whether this bill in the Senate is going to go through or not. Because as we speak right now, there's a live bill that is in the Senate, and Senate is part of Parliament. Now, coming back to my sister Joy, what she has mentioned, is it because Chief Justice wants to punish Parliament because of the issue of the budget cuts? When there were budget cuts, they were cutting across all the sectors. You can only share what you have. When you look at the projections of KRA has not managed to meet the targets in terms of revenue collections. With these challenges of Corona, we must in our belts that maybe the Chief Justice wanted to punish Parliament because judiciary had cuts in terms of their budgets. Even Parliament, as we speak right now, their budgets were cut. The executive, the budgets were cut. The Chief Justice should know you can only share what you have. He lives in this country. He knows the challenges, the economic challenges we've had. The projections of KRA have never been met. So it is important as a citizen of this country. Yeah. You should be able to share the list that is there.
But why have you consistently failed, Honorable Amalo? Why have you consistently failed in passing the 2/3 gender rule?
First and foremost to say that one of the things that have contributed to the failure to that gender rule, at one time, and I mentioned it yesterday on the floor of the House, the time this matter came on the floor of the House, you know, we must have a minimum threshold of the 2/3. We were unable to raise the 2/3. Parliament has tried, it's about 4 times. We've had the Duale 1, the Duale 2. But unfortunately, the last time we were voting, we didn't meet the threshold. And I was on record yesterday, like our women colleagues, they've been shouting loudest noise. But when we go to the Hansard last time, some of them had traveled abroad for some official functions, and we didn't meet the quorum, and the bill was lost. So the issue here has been mostly the issue of quorum. And also when you look at the public participation, you realize that this issue has actually not been popular. And I'm aware there's a bill on the floor of the House as we speak right now by the MP for Dagoretti, whereby he wants even to delete the issue of the 2/3 because it's actually not achievable.
Okay. So, Joy, can an illegally constituted parliament therefore endorse or spearhead any more changes henceforth, even if they have a bill now? Can they really just...
It is not illegally. It is still legal.
This is based on the advisory of the
Just
Chief
my
Justice.
sister, it is still legal
Yes.
as we speak right now. Once the Chief Justice has given the advisory, it is now awaiting the presidency.
But
And
either
there's no
way,
Okay,
Honorable
law which
Amalwa,
says
either
that
way,
the president will take 1 week or 2
Honorable
weeks.
Amalwa,
He
hold
can
on,
as well
hold your
dissolve
horses,
Parliament in
Honorable Amalwa.
2022.
It is
So
obvious
it is not
now,
illegal. It is
Honorable
legal.
Amalwa, the Parliament does not adhere to the two-thirds gender rule, which is expressly stated in the Constitution. It is therefore unconstitutional. It is not even a debate. Joy?
It is unconstitutionally, and it has been unconstitutional from the get-go. And this actually is a perpetuation of impunity, I think, because we have to come to a place where let's call a spade a spade. Now, the technicality here is until it is declared unconstitutional and until the president dissolves parliament, then Honorable Mala is right. The National Assembly as well as the Senate sit properly as constituted currently. However, it is not what we envisage in the law. And Honorable Amalwa has hit the nail on the head. This issue is not popular, and that is why the Constitution had a clause in it to ensure that we achieve gender parity. Everybody knows we live in a patriarchal society where women have hurdles in accessing leadership. And when we come to a situation where we have told ourselves we are going to be intentional about bringing women to the table, then it is upon our parliamentarians to ensure that this happens. So if women parliamentarians have traveled, majority of the parliamentarians are men anyway. Why did they not meet? Why did they not debate it? Why did they defeat it by voting with their feet? It's an abrogation of the duty that we have given them. They are earning a salary, and part of what they're earning is to pass laws that give life to the Constitution that we have. If you look at Schedule 5 of the Constitution, that gave timelines as to when certain laws needed to be passed. For some reason, this one of the gender rule was left out. The Supreme Court talked about it and said, you know what, let's do this progressively. We've given the National Assembly ample time to pass the laws. And Honorable Amalwa knows, even if it passes in the Senate, it has to come back to the National Assembly. So the bat on this one stops soundly at the door of the National Assembly. Now, what they have done is put the president between a rock and a hard place. And that's what I was saying, at least for the president, he has a wriggle room to say, okay, because there are no timelines and the situation right now in the country is dire, maybe I will take my time with it. However, by pulling that trigger, the CJ Maraga has put the president in a situation where he must act in according to the Constitution. So I would see the president trying to hold off the resolution for as long as possible to where it's likely up to the general election. But if he goes ahead and pulls the trigger now, then it's going to precipitate a by-election, a massive by-election in this day and age. But be that as it may, I think it's also an opportunity for the country to ask itself, are we really ready to make women equal partners in development in this country? We are the majority tilling land, we are the majority. In the workforce, we are the majority. Look, even professionally, women are coming to the fore as being very able partners in development. Why is it our political space is still remaining closed to women? So my challenge is back to the National Assembly. This idea may be unpopular, but there are ways of making it work. We have mooted several formulas time and time again. In fact, we've come to a place where we should be at 50-50. Why are we talking about a third? Because if I use the Law Society as an example, we now have a council where we only have got 3 men versus 12 women, I think 12 or 13 women. Now, it looks like a mirage, but there's going to come a time when it will be the men needing to be nominated because women are becoming more and more empowered and we're very aggressive and we're going after what we want. Okay. So Honorable Wamala may not think so now, but give it another 15 years, the tables could be turned. So this is not a women issue. Okay. This is a matter of equality.
All right, Honorable Malo, you mentioned that this seems like punishment to Parliament, and I'm wondering, how does adhering to the Constitution turn into punishment?
Mm-hmm. I never said, Trevor, that it looks like punishment. In fact, I want it to be on record that I support the two-third gender rule. I support the Duale 1. I support the Duale 2. I've been on the front line advocating. But I want to take you down the memory lane. Remember there was a Supreme Court advisory which say that when it comes to elective seats, this one can be achieved progressively. The Supreme Court, does it achieve the two-thirds agenda? Look at our cabinet. Those are not position, not elected. Does the cabinet qualify when it comes to issues of the two-thirds agenda? It is very difficult to control the issues of two-thirds agenda, particularly and the Supreme Court advisory, which Justice Maraga was actually. No, at that time it was in the, I think it was in the 11th Parliament during the time of the former Chief Justice. It said that this issue can be achieved progressively, and Parliament, in its wisdom, has actually tried to achieve that. We've had Duale 1, Duale 2, and right now, as we speak, we even have a bill in the Senate that we are waiting, which we can be able to expedite, and we can be able to achieve this maybe before 2022. But my advice to the president lives in this country. He has very good advisors. He has the wisdom. With the challenge of Corona in place, with the challenge of IBC as we speak right now, and the fact that that advisory doesn't have a clear time frame, he should wait and dissolve Parliament in 2022 as we go for the general election. Right now, let's focus on BBI. Once the BBI report comes out, and I'm hoping that when the BBI report comes out, it is going to address these issues of the two-thirds agenda so that we can resolve it for once and for all. And I support the bill that Honorable JK is trying to bring on the floor of the House. These issues of two-thirds agenda should be applied to appointive position as opposed to elective. If we want to achieve this when it comes to elective, unless we amend the Elections Act, we amend the Political Parties Act, we amend the IBC Act, and you know very well, you can't force somebody when it comes to voting that you must elect a woman, that you must elect certain gender. No, you cannot force that. When it comes to elections, Kenyans have a freedom. They have a right to vote for whoever candidate they feel like. So it is going to be very, very difficult to achieve this when it comes to elective position. So my humble request is release the BBI report, and I'm hoping that the BBI report will address this elephant in the room so that we address these issues of the two-thirds agenda once and for all. So let's wait for the BBI, if it means doing a referendum, whatever it is, so that we sort out this issue. The president should wait, should not dissolve Parliament. Dissolving Parliament, it will be chaotic. It is only Parliament that can pass the budget. As you saw yesterday, the issues of sharing the revenue formula, there's no way the Treasury can release funds to the counties until National Assembly passes this bill. And it's been subjected now to public participation. So it will be plunging this country into chaos.
Okay.
The arms of government cannot operate without Parliament. Parliament is there to legislate. Parliament is there to oversight. Parliament is there to represent. So that advisory, it was ill-advised and premature.
All right, let's take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll bring in Steve Ogola, also an advocate of the High Court, just to make heads and tails of this. And the biggest question is, even as Honorable Amalwa says, we wait for the BBI, can an illegally constituted parliament therefore endorse or even spearhead changes to the constitution? That right after the break.